Thank you, Jerry. Nice to be back. And I'll have to explain why I went to so many universities. It's not because I was such a scholar. Why did I go to all these different universities? Well, I was, without knowing it at the time, I was looking for my own personal utopia. And that was even before I even knew that there was such a thing called utopia. But I did know that when I got the GI Bill and I left the Army and I got some training in the medical world, working in the operating room, OR tech, operating room technician. Then I went to the university, finally, and just found out just how ignorant I was. I was like, wow, it's a big world. There's so much to learn. And I was like a kid in a candy shop, and then I would, go off here to science, microbiology, over here, in the afternoon. It's PE time, doing a little bit of gymnastics. Then I can take a class in art, art appreciation, and then I actually even started playing the piano, and then Spanish and German, and like, and then I felt like, wow, here is this wonderful opportunity to learn this, and I didn't know it at the time, but this was my own personal utopian experience. How wonderful that is, just to take in this variety of ideas, experiences, aesthetics, perspectives. So with the ideals that I was picking up in some of these different universities, then I got to the point where I said, well, I think I've tried this particular restaurant for a while. I wonder how that restaurant over there is. When I went from the University of Colorado, then the Metropolitan State in Colorado, and then I went to Hunter College in New York. That flew me off into Sevilla, Spain for a semester abroad. So each of these, just always looking towards the next thing, but also very hungry the whole time, just trying to fill this void of what I was imprinted with, what I was taught about how the world was, and then what I was really getting from, the great ideas, the perennial philosophies. So as I was going along, then slowly dawning on me that even though I personally was having a great time, which I typically like to continue to do, but the more that I looked at it, the world in general, there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of suffering, and a lot of people who were just really not so happy. And even though I personally could create a life that was, for me, very fulfilling, stimulating, expanding, interesting in so many different ways, but yeah, look out there into the world, and there's a lot of suffering. It's not so great. So then I thought, oh, well, there must be something, needs to be shifted and changed in the political system, because we're in this society together, and how are we organizing things? How are we, making this larger construct of how we can be together? And it doesn't seem to be working for everybody. So then I started, had a semester then in poli-sci, or political science. And then once I did that just for one semester, I figured out, wait a minute, they're just trying to, how can you fit into the system at present and feed it? Well, I was not impressed with that. So onward to political philosophy, and then started comparing different philosophies: socialism, communism, democratic socialism, Fabian socialism, capitalism, enlightened capitalism, our democratic process, and so forth. Kind of like comparing all these different things, a little bit similar to as I was comparing these different universities. and saying, oh, okay, well, this is how this is organized, and this is how decisions are made with this particular system. This one over here. Oh, one of the interesting things I found was that because I grew up in the Air Force. My father was in the Air Force. I had 3 years in the Army. And then it dawned on me later, years later, that, wow, the military system is a communist system, which pretty much every military person would want to argue about that. But if you take a look at how it's worked, monies from the larger society is put towards this group, towards this, we'll call it the military, but it could be any system. And therefore, within this group, there is no monetary focus that you have to produce to make money. Okay, that's capitalism. The military is there to protect. It's there to defend. And so they are outside of that, but they also have their own medical system. They have constant income. They're pretty much taken care of, which is, interestingly enough, that was the ideals of the communists. Oh, okay, how interesting. But then I go, well, but we don't really want a military communist system. That doesn't seem to be so positive either, and we have examples of that in history. And at the time, of course, this is the Soviet Union was really, the Red Scare. Interesting about that word, Red Scare, that phrase. So then I go, okay, well, let's take a look at that system. How about another system? Remembering all the while, I'm thinking about, what about the most ideal system? How could we, like, the best happiness for everyone? That was, the idealism. This, by the way, was after I had my personal mystical experiences. And so I had a spiritual perspective already that, it's not just a matter of, having a place to live and money to spend and amusements that you can go to, but truly a fulfilling life, a spirit-filled, conscious life of caring for each and every person within the system itself. So then I started paying attention to the different types of organized structures in which one can say this is how a community and a society can run, which includes these various isms, communism, socialism, capitalism, and so forth. And after, again, a couple of years, remember I'm still going from one university to another university, that it occurs to me, and this is also a very weird idea, that any system you wish can work. It can be communist, it can be capitalist, it can be socialist. Any system will work if the correct people are in charge. And therefore the leaders, and we had a very good example of that with Ron and Grace's presentation, the leaders need to also be heart-centered, caring for the welfare of everyone, and then it will work. So it's a matter truly of leadership. It's a matter of who's in charge, because you can, for instance, with this whole idea of we have the monarchy, and then you have the oligarchy, and then you have the democracy, rule by the one, rule by the few, rule by the many. And again, it just depends on who's in charge. Because with a monarchy, you can just like have one madman, and you have got chaos. You have got a dictator. But you can also have a visionary. You can have truly a person that could be very efficiently in charge, because there's only one person in charge. And says, well, this is how the rules should go, and you have to be nice to each other. I have decreed it. But oftentimes, of course, monarchies turn into the family dynamic system, and then you don't know what the son's going to do. There it goes off again, and there could have been a great leader at one point, but then, boy, Junior, boy, he, where did he take us? So, we take a look then at utopias, and utopia is something in which there is the ideal of how can we, get everything done in an economical, efficient, practical, caring, and fair manner with everybody, so everybody wins. Well, there's a concept. This ideal of a utopia has been a focus point, again, throughout history, and one of the first propounders of that was Plato in ancient Greece, and he wrote The Republic. And the Republic was his initial idea of how could we all be together, and what are the best ways to do that. And some of the different things that he had talked about would be the people of gold, silver, and bronze, which wasn't a sense of a declaration of worth, but it was natural abilities and talents. And the gold people, and they could be born amongst any group, there can be these gold people. And Plato said that they are the ones that should be in charge. And we give them a good, long, thorough, and broad education. And then they are more apt to lead in a good and noble manner. He believed that the golden people who would be ruling should grow up in kind of this military thing that I had talked about before, of a communist thing that they share everything in common, so they're not really material. They are serving the community. And because they are of a gold energy, of a higher stature, of a sense of a greater vision, then they're not going to get pulled into the selfishness, that a lesser person can get lost in. So that was Plato, and he mentioned many other different things about how it can be organized and so forth. And this tome has inspired many people throughout history. It took then 1,000 years later that the next utopian novel came up, and it was called Eutopia. And that was written by Thomas More in 1516. And actually, yeah, that's 2,000 years later, if I do my math right. Yeah, 2,000 years later. And he was inspired, like many people were. Remember, this is 1516, 1492. We know what happened then. So there was suddenly the New World. Wow, the New World. And the possibilities. It's almost like a blank slate. How could, again, in this new place, could we start a society, a city-state, a community, and that is where we can have this utopia. Well, he called it Utopia with a U, Utopia, because that meant, from the Latin, it meant no place. And partly, it was for political reasons that he wrote it that way, because he didn't want to have the authorities at the time get on him about fomenting revolutionary ideas. So he says, oh, no, this is just an imaginative location. It's no place. It's okay. So he put it into this island, this make-believe island, which was very easy to do because, of course, they just discovered the New World, so there's lots of free and open land, forgetting actually that there were already people living there. And so that was kind of the beginning of this modern idea of writing and describing a utopia. How, again, can we really have a great place to live. Again, fairness for all. And one of the big things connected to this type of genre, this type of writing, which is different than science fiction, is that the whole idea is not like, you know, a love plot or an adventure or something like that. No, they want to describe how we can have a good and just system and justice for all. So that's the whole point. And one of the ways to do that is to have a make-believe place elsewhere, because you have to separate it from our society as it is, with all of the issues and the sorrows again, and the poverty and the jealousies and negativities and so forth. So yeah, to create, to construct, to describe in these make-believe lands. Well, then it was 100 years after him that then this whole idea of utopians and utopian societies really started to kick in. And then there was these many different authors, and I've actually have got a list of the utopian literature right here that I've got extra copies if anybody would like. I'll pass them around if you wish. Interesting, again, all by himself, but you know, Christianopolis was one of the books, and you can imagine what the basis of that was. City of the Sun by Thomas Campanella, 1623. New Atlantis by Francis Bacon in the 1600s. In 1840, and in the mid-1800s, coincidentally, when the planet Neptune was discovered, there was this stream of new idealism that came around, of not only with the ideas and social contracts of how we can ideally live with each other, but then these practical communities establishing these ashrams, these spiritual communities in various places, and of course in the United States were many different options like that. They did it in Europe and other places too. But there was this excitement, again in the 1800s and in the mid-1800s in general, about, wow, let's establish this new land, this new place with ideals, and again, so that everybody can benefit from this. There was also an industrialist who, by the name of Robert Owen in the 1820s, 1840s, who established actually two different communities. Even though he was an industrialist, he had a huge factory in Scotland, and but he created a factory town in which, again, with remember this is in the early 1800s, you know, so schools for everyone, opportunities, good and healthy homes that people can live in. Like, so he really brought up the standard of living in his ideals of how he would like to have his society. Then he took that idea and he brought it over to the United States in a place called New Harmony. And I can't remember, maybe Illinois or Indiana. And so he had a community there, and he just invited people to come on over, you know, and be a part of this new experiment. And it didn't work. And we're back to the original idea of, you know, it takes a certain person who would be open to such a thing to make it work. And what he did was like, here's this new opportunity, a community, come on over, you know, but they didn't have the concept, they didn't have the idea, they didn't have the ideals, and it didn't work. Of course, you know, we had here, you know, Hearthfire as part of this community, another idealistic perspective of let's create something new. And one of the things that David and I were talking about here is that it was some pressure from the locals who had another paradigm, who had a perspective on how life is and should be, and it's going to stay that way, doggone it. that was the outside external pressure to these experimental communities that really kind of like brought it to an end. And that is a factor connected to it. Each of these smaller ideals really can't really make it on its own. They need to have a broader appeal in order for us truly to move towards a utopia. Same thing over here in Oregon. I was just watching the Rajneesh show on Netflix. I think it's like five parts in that episode, in the series. And again, in Pune, in India, following Rajneesh, they go over to Oregon. They establish, their community over there. Again, with this idea of a utopian village, dressed in oranges and reds and purples and things like that. Anybody visit the Rajneeshpuram? No? Yeah, I did briefly. But the machine guns kind of scared me away. Yeah, I go, what is happening here? But again, the locals, I'll call them rednecks, were suspicious and even threatened by who are these strange people, coming into our Oregon, our land over here, and what kind of notions are they trying to bring in? You see how we're getting totally different and far away from that sense of breathing it in, positive regard, bringing it back out there. No, it was a confrontational dynamic. And so again, that particular community, and we won't go into details about it, but of course it didn't make it. Like so many other idealistic communities did not make it. It has to be, again, back to the literature of Utopia. You talk about it separately so that it is cleaner. It's not influenced by the, let's say, the larger general prejudices and expectations of how we're supposed to be. And so that has happened time and time again. So, a long tradition, it can go in many different directions, but the basic idea, again, just to confirm that it's not a science fiction thing, on another planet or off into the future, and now all kinds of cool adventures are going to happen over here, and they've got some really cool, like, space toys, That's all very entertaining, but the literature and the idea of a utopia is truly just to describe how really, structure, education, attitudes, division of labor, work, play, and so forth, how can we really all kind of live together in a positive way? And I believe that from time to time, and this is part of me back to my own mystical experiences in the past, sometimes there's been some phases in my life, and it was perhaps in between some of my educational experiences, that I was a space case, and I was like, oh man, that's really nice music, and man, time goes by, and yeah, I love the water. You know what I mean? Time goes by. It's been good. So now I'm writing a book on Utopia. Obviously, I've been thinking about it for a long time. And here and there, just, been taking notes over a period of time. And so I just wanted to share with you the beginning of this present book that I'm writing on Utopia. And as I read from this beginning, you will probably recognize that I'm already thinking about it as a movie. If I could have some music playing. Opening scene, space. Maybe some of you might want to close your eyes as you check out this movie scene on the big screen. Music is playing. Deep space, stars, blackness, points of light, some sense of movement, flight. The craft was returning home, or so was the trajectory and the timing. The clear plexiglass top to Jim's sleep pod opened. Blasts of oxygen pointed to his face. The loose wrap around his chest monitored his body. A few pulses of electrical waves, beeps and pulses. The quiet background, a whir from the atomic power source. Blink. Breathing, a gulp of air. His eyes slowly open. A grimace of sorts, moving his mouth, a stretch. And he slowly turns his head from side to side. Ah, other senses were operating, awakening. Sounds, music, familiar. From a fog, a memory. Yes, he had programmed that. Love that music. A slight smile moves his lips. Arms slowly raising, then slowly sitting up, stretching, looking around, slowly getting focused. The music, melody, louder, lyrics. I'm stepping through the door, and I'm floating in a most peculiar way. And the stars look very different today. His eyes focused into the cabin, all familiar, but he jumped, or tried to, eyes wide. He was not alone. About 8 meters away stood a man in some metallic uniform. Tall, slender, salt and pepper hair. Or was that a helmet? Jim sort of froze, striving to comprehend. Eyes checking left and right. We are in space, in my capsule. Wait a minute. Protocol, timeline. This is a multi-year voyage, and he hadn't seen any other people outside of his crew for years. Years. And here, on his ship, was a stranger waving, calmly observing, then offering a big smile. Gestures. Doesn't seem dangerous, but Jim looked around, trying to orient. Who are you? How did you get here? The man in uniform, yes, a form of spacesuit, made noises. Some words, sounds. Jim says, I'm sorry, I don't understand. The greeter mouthed something, unintelligible. No, some familiar sounds, but another language. This will complicate things, thought the astronaut. He recalled the origins of the word barbarism. The ancient Greeks classified foreign languages as people mouthing bar, 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 and thus the word barbarian, foreigner. He looked around. The team, between them, could speak 8 languages. we'll need to wake up the crew to see who understood this. Wait, is this even an Earth language? No, he looks human. The stranger, greeter, gestured, pointing to his mouth, then ear, displaying a pin or earpiece. There was a sort of, may I? gesture, and he slowly and respectfully brought the little device towards Jim. Jim's reaction was to retreat. This person, a human, was coming at him, approaching. Deep breath. Okay, he seems friendly. The tall man approached closer. Deft and delicate hands and fingers brought this earpiece closer, then touched, attached. Quickly, the garbled noise became comprehensible. Do you understand me now? Asked the new astronaut. Yes. This man was an astronaut, having come up here somehow onto the ship. Jim responded in English. Yes, I do understand you. I didn't before. Remarkable. Remarkable indeed. Now we can communicate. Welcome home. We welcome you back. So now he understands English. When I put this device in my ear, Jim thought, you speak English? Well, no, perhaps a simple English. It was the language of my ancestors. I actually understood you before, but knew you didn't understand me. I too have this ear pin. It automatically translates close to 100 languages, even though there are basically 3 universal languages used today. I speak Neo-Esperanto. They both looked at each other, both taking in this new experience. The greeter, visitor, with warm eyes, gesticulated, pointing to his ear again, then to the source of the music. I do know some lyrics to some English songs. I sort of recognize the meanings in this music that is playing now. Who is the composer? David Bowie. This piece is called Space Oddity. Ah, catchy. Our community will enjoy it. Again, welcome. Shall we awaken your companions? Uranus will be coming into view within an hour. You'll fly right past it. That would be a propitious time to awaken. Propitious. An interesting word to use, thought Jim. Maybe it is the translator. Something similar. Again, I have to ask, how did you get on my ship? Oh, through the main doorway up to the left. As you know, it can be opened from both sides, inside and outside. Gesturing. Oh yes, my ship is over there, not far. Come. Pointing out the port side window. There she is. My name is Tulevik, by the way. Pleased to meet you. Our people are very excited to meet you. Hard to believe. It was like a fairy tale. Suddenly, your ship entered our solar system, passed Pluto, and then we made preparations to meet you. Help if we can. Once we identified your spacecraft, actually manufactured and returning to its origins after all these years, a long voyage, well, we were somewhat astounded. We knew about your mission so long ago, but we thought you were missing in action, lost. And here you are. Yes, says Jim, I must admit I am also a bit overwhelmed. Finally returning to Earth and then to have someone from an advanced time and civilization. that could create a vessel and meet us here. Wait. You seem somewhat surprised that we, from your own future, would be advanced enough for spaceflight. Well, yes. Things were in turmoil when we left. Some of us believed the Earth could decline into chaos, and within decades. Pessimistic, some. That was when we left for Alpha Centauri. It was 2031. An international team sent off from the United States. Ah, yes, I saw your insignia, flag, upon the side of this vessel. The USA. I've read about it. That nation merged with others, expanded. Now the area and beyond is called the North American Federation. Jim took a step back. Hard to digest. Breathing, breath, eyes moving but not seeing. A tune was playing in his thoughts. Planet Earth is blue, and there's nothing I can do. Jim ventured, I have to ask then, what year is it? 2164. Jim had to take that in. In a half trance, Jim approached the life support console, examined the levers and switches. He was still a bit groggy, or was that dazed? He took a few breaths to clear his head. Oxygen. Suspended animation, a prolonged sleep, 60 years times 2. We awoke at our destination, performed our experiments, made observations near Alpha Centauri, expanded science. Or did we? Will these people of the future care about our studies, or would it be elementary school for them? Time to wake the others up. Eutopia. Any comments, questions? Right. And so it reminded Carol of anthropology in an anthropological perspective. And I must admit, sometimes when I don't think of myself as a space brother, I think that sometimes I'm an anthropologist, dropped here upon the Earth, just looking and trying to study these humans, trying to figure out what the heck, what kind of customs did they come up with? Yeah. And it's good to be back. What's that, Janelle? Oh, he said, Stephen, you are so brilliant. Thank you all.